Parker finally let herself want Alice back. Then she heard a conversation she was never supposed to hear. And suddenly, the woman she couldn't stop craving became the woman she couldn't trust. This is an original fictional story. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or to actual events is purely coincidental. I did not sleep well after the gala. That should not surprise anyone. There are nights when a city hums outside your window and somehow syncs itself to your nervous system, so perfectly that rest becomes an insult. Miami was good at that. Too much light even after midnight. Too much reflected gold on glass towers. Too much life still happening 3 streets over while you lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the exact way a woman looked at you when she said she was trying, against her own nature, to do this properly. It would have been easier if Alice had stayed arrogant. That was the problem. Arrogance, I knew how to fight. Charm, I knew how to sidestep. Entitlement, I knew how to punish with distance. But sincerity arriving in flashes between all of that? Real self-awareness, even partial? A beautiful woman in white silk saying, with her pride still intact, that one night with me had not been enough? That was a worse kind of trouble. A more intelligent kind. The kind that did not just push against your boundaries. It waited for you to question whether the boundaries were protecting you or imprisoning you. So by Monday morning, I arrived at the office already annoyed with myself. I dressed accordingly. Black trousers, crisp cream blouse buttoned high, hair pinned back, gold studs small enough to look practical. No softness, no visible weakness, no trace of the woman who had stood on a terrace in a slit dress while Alice Bradley looked at her like confession and temptation were suddenly the same language. The office was all pale light and chilled air when I stepped off the elevator. Screens waking up. Coffee already brewing in the break area. Someone laughing softly near the corner conference rooms. The bay beyond the glass still a cool metallic blue before the sun decided to become theatrical about it. I made it to my desk. Opened my laptop. Started reading through the Monday overnight reports. And for almost 28 full minutes, my life was peaceful. Then a message appeared on my screen. From Alice. I am trying a new approach. This is me not cornering you in person before 9 a.m. I stared at the message. Then typed, "Congratulations on your growth." Her reply came less than 10 seconds later. "Thank you. It's very difficult and I deserve admiration." I should not have smiled. I did anyway. I killed the smile instantly, which felt noble and useless. The next message followed. "Dinner tomorrow night. 1 table. No games. No pressure. You can leave whenever you want. If you say no, I will accept it with dignity and probably suffer beautifully in silence." I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the water for a second. That was what made her infuriating. She was still Alice in every sentence. Still dramatic. Still self-aware. Still impossible. But the sharpest edge had shifted. The force was lower now. The push had become an ask. I typed, "Probably is not reassuring." She wrote back, "It's the most honest word in the sentence." I let that sit there on my screen far longer than it should have. Then, "I'll think about it." Her answer, "That's not a no. I'll take the win." That should have irritated me more than it did. Instead, against my better judgment, it stayed with me all morning. The strange thing about attraction, once it becomes mutual and specific, is that it changes the architecture of ordinary days. Hallways become loaded. Elevators become negotiations. Meetings become endurance tests disguised as operational updates. Alice kept her word. Mostly. She did not corner me. She did not brush against me in passing. She did not send reckless messages during work hours. But she was still present in the way only a woman like Alice could be present, through awareness itself. I would enter a room and feel, half a second later, that she had already noticed. I would speak during a meeting and sense her attention sharpen even before I looked up to confirm it. On Tuesday afternoon, I was presenting a revised forecast model to Mike and 2 senior directors when Alice walked in late from another meeting. Late, and somehow still composed. She wore a pale gray suit that day, the fabric smooth enough to catch light at the shoulder when she moved. The jacket fit close through the waist, the silk beneath it dark blue, like midnight seen through glass. Her hair was tied back, exposing elegant gold earrings and the clean line of her neck. She took a seat without interrupting me, one leg crossing over the other, tablet in hand, expression perfectly neutral. The problem was that I knew her expression too little and too well at the same time. Because neutral on Alice did not mean empty. It meant she was paying attention with surgical force. I kept speaking. I walked them through volatility assumptions, retention segmentation, the flawed logic in one of the older comparison models. My voice held steady. My slides were clear. The directors asked competent questions. Mike pushed where he should. The room stayed where I needed it to stay. Until I finished, and Alice finally spoke. "Your threshold adjustment on the middle band," she said, glancing at the screen and then at me. "Why that specific percentage?" The question was clean. Fair. Not hostile. Still, I felt all my concentration gather and sharpen. Because the previous banding treated caution and disengagement as the same behavior, I said. They're not. One is uncertainty. The other is exit. If we group them together, we overcorrect in the wrong places. A pause. Alice looked at me for one long second. Then she said, "Good. Just that. No flourish. No teasing. No glint." And somehow that one word, spoken in front of other people in that low, exact voice, landed harder than any flirtation she had tried so far. Because it sounded like respect. That was new. After the meeting, Mike stopped me in the hallway. "Nice work," he said. "Thanks. She'll push you when she thinks you can take it." I looked at him. "Who?" He gave me a dry look. "Please. I'm committed to professionalism. You're committed to pretending you haven't had an eventful month. It's been 1 week." "Exactly," he said, and walked off before I could ask what the hell that was supposed to mean. By Tuesday evening, I said yes to dinner. Not because I was weak. That deserves emphasis. Not because her messages had been charming, or because she had looked sinful and gray, or because my body had become a traitorous committee that immediately approved anything involving her voice after dark. I said yes because uncertainty is exhausting, and part of me wanted to see whether Alice could sit across from me in a normal setting and still feel like a catastrophe. Her response to my yes came within seconds. "Thursday, 8 p.m. I'll send the location." Then another. "I'm aware that sounding pleased is unhelpful right now, so I'll keep the rest to myself." I typed. "That's wise." She sent back. "No, it isn't. It's restraint. We've discussed how foreign that is to me." By Thursday, Miami had turned itself into one of those warm, glowing evenings that made bad choices look almost architectural. The sky faded through apricot and pale gold into a deeper blue over the bay. The sidewalks were still warm from the day. Palm shadows moved over white walls and parked cars. Everything looked brushed with money and humidity. I chose a navy dress I immediately regretted caring about. It wasn't dramatic. That would have been easier to defend. It was worse than dramatic. It was elegant. Sleeveless, fitted clean through the waist, hem just below the knee, the kind of dress that made me stand straighter without trying. I wore heels low enough to count as practical and a thin gold bracelet I had not touched in months. Hair down. Minimal makeup. Nothing about me said I had spent 15 full minutes pretending I was not choosing lipstick based on what it might do to Alice's concentration. The restaurant she picked sat above the water, discreet from the street and all soft amber inside. Dark wood. Linen tables. Candlelight that managed not to feel staged. The kind of place where people spoke in measured tones because the room itself refused to be noisy. Alice was already there. Of course she was. She stood when she saw me, and for a brief second, actually brief, the expression on her face was not crafted at all. It was simply reaction. Real, immediate, and strong enough that I almost stopped walking. She was in black that night. Silk fitted, long sleeves pushed lightly to the forearms. No jacket. Gold watch. Hair loose and brighter in the candlelight. The absence of corporate armor made her look less distant and somehow more dangerous. Less board member. More woman. "Say something normal," I said as I reached the table. "That was the plan," she said. "Then you arrived." I exhaled through my nose. "That is not normal." "No," she agreed softly. "But it is true." The hostess pretended not to notice anything and led us to the table anyway. Dinner with Alice should have been a performance. I expected a performance. I expected her to be dazzling and difficult and skillfully impossible, the kind of woman who could make an evening feel expensive even when it was going badly. Instead, she surprised me by being attentive in a quieter way, not less intense, just less polished for effect. She asked about my work, but not as a tactic. She asked what kind of analyst I wanted to become in 5 years if the market did not end civilization first. She asked what betrayal had done to my sense of timing. She asked whether I missed who I was before Megan, or if I only missed the version of myself who still believed loyalty guaranteed safety. That question stopped me. I looked up from my glass and found her watching me, not in triumph, not waiting to be right, just waiting to hear the answer. The second one, I said. Alice nodded slowly. That sounds harder to recover. It is. The candlelight moved across the planes of her face when she tilted her head. In it, she looked a little softer around the edges, though maybe that was only because she was not trying to win the room. She was only trying, and that distinction mattered more than I wanted it to. And you? I asked. What are you like when you're not efficient at getting what you want? A slow smile. I wouldn't know, she said. I gave her a look. She laughed, then leaned back slightly in her chair. All right. Honest answer. That would be refreshing. When I can't control an outcome, I get sharper. Faster. More impatient. Her gaze stayed on me. That's the ugly version. You're awfully aware of your flaws. I have a brother, a board, and enough former lovers to keep me informed. That is a terrible sentence. It's a true one. There were moments that night when I forgot to resist her. That is the honest version. Not because I became stupid. Not because she hypnotized me into bad judgment. But because the chemistry stopped being the only thing in the room. We found rhythm. Real rhythm. The dangerous kind that comes from being mentally matched before anything else happens. At one point, she told me about being 23 and sitting in her brother's office at 2 in the morning in bare feet, both of them eating terrible vending machine snacks while arguing over whether risk tolerance was a character trait or a market condition. He said I was impossible, she said. What did you say? That I was correct. That tracks. It was a formative evening. I laughed, and her eyes warmed in a way that did not feel like flirtation exactly. More like satisfaction. Like she enjoyed the sound more than she was prepared to admit. When dessert menus came, neither of us looked at them. We had gone too far past polite dinner by then. Not into anything explicit. Just into that other realm. The one where pauses start meaning more than the sentences before them. The one where eye contact becomes its own form of physical proximity. The one where a woman saying your name quietly across candlelight feels like a touch. Outside, when the evening ended, the bay air hit warm and salted. Lights broke in fragments over the dark water. The city beyond the marina looked like scattered jewelry. Alice walked me toward the car, but when we reached it, she stopped. Still okay? She asked. The question caught me off guard not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar now. A private echo. Yes, I said. She studied my face for a second too long. You're thinking. I do that. About leaving. About whether saying yes to dinner counts as a lapse in judgment. And I looked at her. Black silk. Gold watch. Miami light catching in her hair. The faintest trace of perfume moving with the wind. A face built for confidence and currently a little too open to hide that she wanted me to say something encouraging. I haven't decided yet, I said. That made her smile. Cruel, she murmured. You keep saying that. Because you keep earning it. She stepped closer then. Not close enough to trap me. Not close enough to take anything for granted. Just enough to let me feel the pull of her again. The awareness. The charge that existed even in silence. I'm not going to kiss you tonight, she said. That should have relieved me. Instead, it sent a strange, sharp line of disappointment through me. Why? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes darkened immediately. There you are, she said softly. I hated that she saw everything. Then, after a beat, because if I kiss you right now, you'll think dinner was strategy. And was it? No, her voice lowered. But I'm intelligent enough to understand timing. That answer stayed with me for days. And if you're still here with me at this point, caught somewhere between caution and chemistry, like the story and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and whether a woman becomes more dangerous when she stops chasing and starts trying. Because that was the exact question ruining my sleep. Things changed after that. Not all at once. That would have been simpler. They changed by degree, and the degree was what made it difficult to defend against. Alice really did shift. She still looked at me too long. She still had a mouth made for provocation and no ethical hesitation about using it. But the pressure changed shape. She stopped trying to break my resistance and started asking for access instead. Coffee after a meeting. 2 minutes in a hallway that actually stayed 2 minutes. A message after midnight that said only you were right about the donor model. I hate how much I enjoy this. I learned that she preferred still water but always forgot to drink enough of it. That she hated flowers used as apology props. That she called Mike by his first name only when she was genuinely angry and by my brother when she wanted to sound detached and failed. That she had a habit of taking off her watch when a conversation became personal, as if time itself annoyed her under those circumstances. I also learned that the company liked to operate under the illusion that power and family did not visibly overlap, which was charming because on Friday afternoon Mike's youngest daughter ended up in the executive lounge coloring on a printed investor packet while a nanny dealt with some minor emergency. I saw Alice before she saw me. That was rare enough to feel like stolen information. She was seated on the low sofa across from the little girl, her long legs crossed, white blouse sleeves rolled just enough to expose elegant forearms, her blazer folded beside her. One of Mike's sons sat on the carpet by her heels, building a lopsided tower out of coasters with the intense concentration only children and hostile takeover specialists seemed capable of. Alice was laughing. Not polished laughter. Not the measured kind she used at events. Real laughter. Brief, low, surprised by the children and given to them anyway. She let the little girl clip a bright plastic barrette into her immaculate blonde hair. She did not protest when the boy informed her the tower needed better structural leadership. She only said, very solemnly, I admire your commitment to critique, and handed him another coaster. The sight of it hit me somewhere undefended, because it did not fit the version of her I had wanted to keep. The easy one. The dangerous one. The one who only lived on rooftops and in boardrooms and in silk after midnight. This version was still elegant, still composed, still unmistakably Alice, but something about the children made her unguarded around the edges. More generous. Less curated. She looked up then and saw me in the doorway. The smile on her face shifted immediately, not disappearing, just sharpening into something more private. Well, she said, now I have an audience. The little girl twisted around on the sofa. Aunt Alice said my barrette improved her. I stared at the bright pink clip in Alice's expensive hair and felt myself smile before I could stop it. It definitely made you more approachable, I told her. Alice placed one hand over her heart. Devastating. Mike walked in a few seconds later, took one look at his sister with the barrette, and laughed so hard he had to put his coffee down. That should have been ridiculous. It was. But it also did something far worse than ridiculous. It warmed me. Later, back at my desk, I caught myself replaying the image of Alice sitting among crayons and children with complete sincerity, and I understood, with a level of irritation that felt almost noble, that I was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind where your objections are still valid, but your heart has become annoyingly nuanced. A week later, I ended up on the terrace outside one of the smaller executive lounges after a long day that had gone too well and left me too wounded to go directly home. The night air was warm. The sky still carried a deep cobalt glow over the water. The city below flashed and moved and refused to quiet down. I had kicked off my heels and was standing with one hand around a glass of water, the other resting against the stone railing, trying to let the breeze untangle my thoughts. The terrace door opened behind me. I did not turn immediately. I knew who it was. Alice had become recognizable by silence alone. You look like you're either about to have a breakthrough or commit a felony, she said. I smiled into my glass despite myself. You always this reassuring? Only when I care. I turned then. She was in black trousers and a soft ivory blouse, no jacket, the top buttons undone just enough to suggest the day had been long, and she had stopped pretending otherwise. Her hair had loosened from whatever neat arrangement it had begun in, one bright strand fallen forward near her cheek. The city lights cut pale gold along the line of her throat. Long day, she asked. I just spent 3 hours explaining to a man with 4 homes why his instincts are not a forecasting method. That does sound exhausting. And you? Board call. 2 donor issues. 1 legal irritation. I would rank my evening as hostile. I laughed softly. She came to stand beside me at the railing. Not touching. Not crowding. The space between us felt more deliberate than touch would have. For a moment, we just looked out over the city. Then she said, "You were very good today." I looked at her sideways. "You already said that in the meeting. I'm saying it again. I didn't think you'd mind." "I don't." Silence. Warm wind. A yacht somewhere below cutting a line of light across the bay. "I like seeing you with Mike's kids," I said before I could decide whether that was wise. Her head turned toward me. That's dangerous information to admit. Why? Because now I know exactly what kind of image I should be weaponizing. I gave her a look. And you were doing so well. She laughed, then went quiet again. The next part happened slowly enough that I could tell myself I still had choices. Alice took the glass from my hand and set it on the railing beside hers. Her fingers brushed mine in the process. Intentional. Questioning. She looked at me, not playful now. Not smiling. Just there, fully attentive waiting. Still okay, she asked. That question again. That quiet checkpoint she somehow made feel more intimate every time she used it. Yes, I said. The word had barely left my mouth before she kissed me. Not like Sunday. Not like a stranger. This was worse. This was a woman who already knew the exact pace that made my pulse turn against me. A woman who had learned restraint and was using it not to reduce the heat, but to sharpen it. Her mouth moved against mine slowly first, like she was giving me time to stop it and knowing I wouldn't. My hands found her before I had decided where to put them. One at her waist, one at the back of her neck where her hair had loosened. She inhaled softly against my mouth, and the sound nearly ruined me on the spot. The city vanished. Not literally, but enough. The lights blurred. The railing disappeared from relevance. The whole terrace narrowed to silk, skin, breath, and the way Alice kissed like she was trying to memorize what I did to her while I was doing it. She drew back only far enough to look at me. Her lips were softer now, no longer perfect. Her eyes had lost that boardroom coolness entirely. There you are, she whispered. I should have stepped away. I kissed her again instead. Harder this time. Something low and pleased broke out of her, almost a laugh, almost a sound of surrender, and then her hand was at my waist, the other sliding up along my bare arm with a care that was infinitely more dangerous than anything rough would have been. She turned us slightly, so my back met the stone edge of the terrace wall, but gently, leaving space, leaving me room to object. I didn't. I was breathing too fast and too warm, and far too aware of the exact point where her blouse shifted over her shoulder when I touched it. Parker, she said against my mouth, and hearing my name like that from her should have been classified. I grabbed lightly at the fabric at her waist. That made her breath catch. That, more than anything, made me reckless. For a little while the night became a sequence of sensation rather than time. Her mouth at the corner of mine. My fingers in her hair. The warm wind moving around us while her body stayed steady and controlled and very much not unaffected. One kiss deepening into another until thoughts started arriving late and leaving early. Then she paused. Forehead against mine. Both of us breathing hard. Tell me to stop, she said quietly. I opened my eyes. What? Tell me to stop, she repeated, voice rougher now. If that's what you want. I looked at her. At the woman who had frightened me, infuriated me, apologized to me, made me laugh, and somehow turned asking into its own form of intensity. No, I said. Her eyes closed for one brief second, as if that answer cost her more control than she liked. Then she kissed me again. When I finally pulled back, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because if I stayed there another minute, I was going to forget every carefully reasoned objection I had built around her. Alice read that on my face immediately. You're thinking again, she murmured. That's because one of us has to. She smiled, but there was heat in it now. I'm perfectly capable of thought. That is not the impression you're making. You wound me. You'll survive. Possibly. Her gaze dropped briefly to my mouth again. Though I'm less confident than before. I laughed once, breathless and unwilling. And then, because self-preservation is ugly but sometimes functional, I stepped away. I should go home. She did not argue. That should have reassured me. Instead, it made me want to stay. Parker. I looked back. That intensity was still there, but so was something steadier now. Something I could not dismiss as pure pursuit. I'm trying very hard not to ruin this, she said. I believed her. That was the tragedy. I really believed her. The next morning, I walked into work carrying 2 coffees and the kind of fragile composure that only exists after you've kissed the wrong woman on a terrace and spent the whole drive home touching your own mouth like the memory might still be physically there. At 10:20, Mike asked me to bring a revised file to his office. Simple enough. I printed the documents, crossed the executive floor, and reached his door just as I heard voices inside. Normally, I would have knocked immediately. Normally. But I heard Alice first. I know what you think, she was saying. Her voice had that tightness in it I had only heard once before, the version of her that sounded like controls stretched thinner than usual. Mike answered from somewhere deeper in the office. Good. Then this should be fast. I should have knocked then. I should have made noise, announced myself, done anything to avoid becoming the kind of person who overhears private conversations through polished wood and quiet carpet. Instead, I froze. Not because I wanted gossip. Because I heard my name. She's not a passing interest, Mike. Silence in my body. Then, Mike, you say that now. I went very still. Alice spoke again, Laura. This is different. That's what you always say when something catches fire fast enough. My fingers tightened around the file. You get obsessed, Mike said. Then consumed. Then restless. And when it stops feeling new, you move on. That pattern might be survivable at parties, Alice. It is not survivable here. Feet. The kind that stretches. Then, Alice, you think I don't know how this looks? I think you know exactly how it looks and are doing it anyway. I should have knocked. I know that. But by then, my blood had already gone cold. Mike again, sharper now. Parker is good. She's stable. She worked too hard to land here. I'm not losing a strong analyst because my sister decided intensity felt like destiny for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The words lodged like glass. Alice said something after that, but more quietly, too quiet for me to catch. I only heard the end of it. Not asking your permission. Mike exhaled. That's not the point. No. The point was already sitting in my chest, heavy and humiliating. Pattern. Obsessed. Restless. Passing interest. I backed away from the door before either of them could open it and find me there. The file edge bit into my palm hard enough to leave a mark. I do not remember the walk back to my desk. Not properly. I remember glass walls. Cold air. Someone saying my name from somewhere down the hallway. My own reflection in a window. Too composed to be real. The city outside looking offensively bright, as if Miami had not just turned sharp and metallic around me. The worst part was not Mike. He was a brother. Protective. Skeptical. Maybe unfair, maybe not. The worst part was Alice not denying enough. Not clearly. Not loudly. Not in the way a woman would if she knew the accusation was completely wrong. That was the part that hollowed me out. Because deep down, beneath every kiss and every apology and every terrorist confession, there had always been that fear. That I was not meeting Alice in the middle of some rare, terrifying exception. I was just the newest version of a pattern she had mistaken for fate. By 5 o'clock, I had done the impossible, survived the rest of the workday without screaming. By 5:10, Alice found me. Of course she did. I was in one of the smaller conference rooms overlooking the bay, pretending to revise a document I had already revised twice. The room was washed in late afternoon gold. My laptop was open. My jaw ached from holding still. The door opened softly behind me. I didn't turn. Parker. There was concern in her voice immediately. That nearly made it worse. I closed the laptop. Don't. Silence. Then more carefully, what happened? I laughed once under my breath. It did not sound like anything good. That's bold. She moved farther into the room. I could see her reflection in the darkened screen now. White blouse, dark skirt, hair looser than usual. One hand lowered at her side as if trying not to reach for something. Look at me, she said. I stood. Then I turned. And if she had looked arrogant, I might have survived the moment better. But she looked genuinely concerned, which only sharpened the ache into anger. You should have let me hate you when it was easier, I said. She stopped moving. Every bit of expression left her face except the eyes. What? I held her gaze because if I looked away, I was going to feel weak, and I refused to give the room that. I heard enough, I said quietly. Outside Mike's office. Enough to know your brother knows you very well. Enough to know he thinks I'm the next bright thing you'll burn through until you get bored. Enough to know you didn't exactly sound shocked. Pale stillness spread through her. Parker. No, my voice rose just enough to hurt. Do not say my name like that unless you have a sentence behind it that changes what I heard. Her jaw tightened. It is not what you think. Really. I let out a disbelieving breath. Because it sounded very much like your brother describing your pattern in detail while you stood there explaining that this time is special. It is. I stared at her. The answer landed wrong not because it was cruel, but because it was too late. Her eyes flashed with frustration. I was trying to tell him that it's different. I cut in. I heard that part. She took one step forward. I stepped back immediately. That stopped her cold. For 1 second the room held its breath. Then I said, more quietly now, because quiet sometimes cuts deeper, do you know what the humiliating part is? It's not that your brother thinks I'm disposable. It's that some part of me started hoping he was wrong before you even gave me a reason to believe he was. Something broke across her face then. Not loss of control exactly, but the visible impact of being understood at the exact point she wished she had hidden better. That's not fair, she said. I laughed again, sharper this time. No? What part? The part where I trusted you? Or the part where you made yourself trustable just long enough for this to hurt? Parker. No, my throat tightened around the word. I told you from the beginning not to make this a game. It wasn't. It doesn't matter what you call it if the pattern is the same. Her voice dropped. You are not a pattern. Then why did I have to hear that from a hallway? Silence. Real silence. The kind that tells the truth even before a person answers. Alice looked at me like she wanted to say 10 things at once and hated all of them for arriving late. That was all I needed. I picked up my bag. She moved again, instinctively, and then stopped herself before getting too close. Parker, please. The word please from Alice Bradley should not have sounded as wrecked as it did. It nearly got me. Nearly. But nearly is not enough when the bruise is already forming. I looked at her one last time. At the beautiful, impossible woman who had smiled waking alone because I had done something new to her life. At the woman who had kissed me on a terrace like asking permission could coexist with hunger. At the woman who had, somehow, become important enough to disappoint me. And I said, softly, with all the pain I was still trying not to let show, you should have let me hate you when it was easier. Then I walked out. If that one hurt, like the story, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and which moment hit hardest. The dinner, the terrace, or the overheard conversation. In the next part, Parker cuts Alice off completely. Alice starts unraveling for real, and jealousy turns everything into open fire.